What if I told you that one of the most overlooked factors in preserving your muscle mass isn't what happens in the gym, but what happens in your kitchen, specifically right before bed? This might sound like a late night infomercial setup, but I assure you it's not. It's grounded in the emerging science of nutrition timing, sleep physiology, and something called anabolic resistance. And it's especially relevant if you're over 40, trying to maintain strength, or just curious why muscle seems harder to keep than it used to. Here's the real-world context. Starting around age 30, most of us lose 3 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade. Not just athletes, all of us. By 60, many people have lost enough muscle to make simple tasks harder, walking upstairs, lifting groceries, even maintaining balance. Now, muscle isn't just about aesthetics or performance, it's metabolic gold. It helps regulate blood sugar, improves insulin sensitivity, protects bone health, and plays a critical role in healthy aging. In fact, low muscle mass is a stronger predictor of mortality than obesity in older adults. Yes, stronger. So why does this loss happen? And more importantly, can we do something about it? Over the past few years, my colleagues and I, along with teams across Stanford, Maastricht University in the Netherlands, and beyond, have been following a trail of data that points to something deceptively simple. What you eat before bed might matter more than you think. We're going to unpack that idea carefully, humbly, and with evidence. This isn't about selling a magic bedtime snack or telling you to drink a protein shake at 11:59 p.m. It's about understanding how sleep, metabolism, and nutrient timing interact, and how, in a world of food confusion, small behavior shifts can yield meaningful outcomes. We'll look at 7 science-backed ideas that are changing how we think about muscle preservation, especially during the anabolic window of sleep. Topics like why a small dose of casein or plant protein before bed may reduce overnight muscle loss, how muscle protein synthesis differs with age, and how timing can help, what role insulin and blood sugar play in recovery and muscle maintenance, why quality and personalization of protein matter more than total grams, how resistance training and sleep quality intersect with nutrition timing, the surprisingly powerful role of gut health in nutrient absorption and recovery, and how all of this ties into a bigger story, one not just about muscle, but about food justice, sustainability, and long-term vitality. So, whether you're in your 30s or your 70s, lifting weights, or just trying to stay mobile, this conversation is for you. Muscle doesn't disappear overnight, but every night we neglect certain choices, it chips away quietly, slowly, and preventably. Let's dive into the science and see what bedtime nutrition might look like if we actually listened to the data. In one of the more intriguing studies at a Maastricht University, researchers explored whether consuming protein right before bed could enhance overnight muscle protein synthesis, the body's ability to build and repair muscle tissue while we sleep. The participants, healthy older men. The intervention, a modest dose of casein protein, 40 grams, given 30 minutes before bedtime after a full day of activity and a standard dinner. The results? Remarkable. The group that consumed the protein showed significantly higher rates of overnight muscle protein synthesis compared to the placebo group. In other words, simply timing the protein differently, shifting it closer to sleep, helped their bodies hold on to more muscle overnight. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean you need to guzzle a tub of protein powder at 10 p.m. every night. In fact, that's not the takeaway at all. What this study and others like it suggests is that for people over 40, especially those experiencing age muscle loss, when you consume protein might be nearly as important as how much you consume. This phenomenon is tied to something researchers call anabolic resistance. Essentially, your muscles become less responsive to the signals that trigger growth as you age. Think of it like a volume knob that gets harder to turn the older you get. You need a clearer signal and sometimes a better timing strategy to keep the music playing. In practical terms, this means a younger person might stimulate muscle growth with just 15 grams of protein from a midday meal. But for someone in their 60s, 70s, or beyond, they might need closer to 30 grams, and at more strategic times, like after resistance training or before sleep. And here's where it gets interesting. Sleep itself is a critical time for tissue repair. During deep sleep, your body secretes growth hormone, repairs DNA, rebuilds tissues, and yes, engages in muscle synthesis, but only if it has the amino acids available to do so. If you finish dinner at 6 p.m. and head to bed at 11 p.m., your body may not have enough available fuel to maximize that window of repair. This doesn't mean eating a huge heavy meal right before bed. That could impair sleep quality, which ironically would undermine muscle recovery. Instead, the research points to something subtle, a light, protein-rich snack, preferably something with slow digesting proteins like casein or certain plant-based blends that provide a sustained release of amino acids throughout the night. Some options: a small bowl of unsweetened Greek yogurt with chia seeds, a scoop of casein protein mixed in water or almond milk. For plant-based folks, a pea rice protein blend smoothie with a handful of berries, even edamame or a small portion of lentil soup. These aren't bodybuilder meals. They're sleep-friendly ways to support the natural processes your body already wants to perform. It's also worth noting that most people skew their protein intake toward dinner and often neglect it at breakfast and in the evening wind down. That's what makes this insight particularly powerful. It's not about eating more necessarily. It's about redistributing what you already eat to better support your body's rhythms. And if you're thinking, wait, doesn't eating before bed make you gain weight? Well, that's one of the most persistent myths in nutrition. In tightly controlled trials like those by the NIH and Tufts, weight gain is driven primarily by total calorie intake, not meal timing. If anything, having a small, high-protein snack in the evening can reduce late-night cravings and improve sleep quality, both of which may help with weight maintenance or loss. So here's the first real-world tool. Try experimenting with a modest, protein-focused snack 30 to 60 minutes before bed. Track how your sleep feels. Notice your hunger levels the next morning. If you're engaging in resistance training, you may also feel less sore and more recovered. And of course, quality matters. Highly processed protein bars or sugary shakes won't do your gut or your sleep any favors. The goal is to nourish, not numb, your body before rest. Note, if you're choosing plant-based proteins, you're not only feeding your muscles, you're feeding the planet. The carbon footprint of pea or soy protein is dramatically lower than that of whey or casein. So this small choice can be an act of environmental health as well as personal health. If this kind of evidence-based, practical approach resonates with you, no hype, just helpful, I'd invite you to subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring more of this research to light and hopefully helps you feel a little stronger and more informed along the way. One of the most humbling truths in nutrition science is that the same body we inhabit in our 20s is not the one we'll inhabit in our 50s, at least not metabolically. And nowhere is that more apparent than in how our muscles respond to food, movement, and time. Let me introduce a term you'll likely hear more of in the coming years: anabolic resistance. We touched on it earlier, but it deserves a closer look. Simply put, as we age, our muscles become less sensitive to the anabolic or growth-stimulating effects of protein. That means the same post-workout smoothie that helped you build muscle in your 30s might barely maintain it in your 60s. Now, this isn't a flaw or failure of the body. It's an adaptive change, one that reflects the cumulative wear and tear of oxidative stress, mitochondrial decline, hormonal shifts, and reduced activity. But it also means we need to become more strategic in how we feed and move our bodies. A 2021 review in the journal Nutrients laid this out clearly. Older adults require roughly 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day to preserve muscle mass, significantly more than the current recommended dietary allowance/kg, which was never designed with aging or muscle preservation in mind. The takeaway is there's enough risk in missed lifestyle choices to destroy our muscle building rate forever. And in the process, we can limit our muscle growth and miss lifespan in mind, which was never designed with aging or muscle preservation in mind. In other words, the RDA is the bare minimum to prevent deficiency, not to support optimal function in later life. But the story doesn't end at total grams. Distribution matters too. Studies show that when older adults consume the same total amount of protein but spread it more evenly across 3 meals, instead of front-loading it all at dinner, they see significantly better outcomes in muscle protein synthesis. And the mechanism? It has to do with the leucine threshold, the minimum amount of the amino acid leucine required in a meal to trigger muscle building pathways, specifically the mTOR signaling pathway. Younger individuals may hit that threshold with 15 to 20 grams of protein. Older adults may need 30 grams or more in one sitting to achieve the same effect. But here's where this gets interesting and hopeful. While aging reduces sensitivity, it doesn't remove responsiveness. In fact, a fascinating twin study from the Finnish twin cohort looked at pairs of identical twins with different physical activity levels across decades. The more active twins, even into their 70s, had greater muscle mass, better insulin sensitivity, and lower levels of systemic inflammation than their less active siblings. Same genes, different lifestyle inputs, meaningful differences. This points to a deeply empowering idea. We may not control aging, but we can influence how we age. So what does this mean in daily life? Let's say you're 65, active a few times a week, and want to maintain muscle. Instead of aiming for one high-protein meal at night, you might structure your day like this. Breakfast, oatmeal with soy milk, chia seeds, walnuts, and a side of tofu scramble, 25 to 30 g protein. Lunch, quinoa salad with lentils, tahini dressing, roasted veggies, another 25 to 30 g dinner. Stir-fried tempeh with brown rice and broccoli, plus a cup of edamame. 30 g. Evening, a light snack of Greek yogurt or a plant-based protein shake. 15 to 20 g. This strategy meets your total protein needs, spreads intake evenly, and supports overnight muscle maintenance. And it does so without resorting to extreme diets or excessive supplementation, just thoughtful, quality-focused eating. But of course, food is only one side of the coin. Resistance training, even bodyweight exercises like squats, push-ups, or using resistance bands helps sensitize the muscles to protein again. It's like priming the soil before planting seeds. The more you train, the more responsive your muscles become to the nutrients you feed them. And don't underestimate the role of sleep. A meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Physiology found that sleep deprivation impairs muscle recovery and increases catabolic hormones like cortisol. So when we say, eat this before bed, it's not just about the food. It's about supporting the entire nighttime recovery ecosystem. Let me leave you with a reflective question. What's one meal in your day where protein could be more intentional, not in quantity, but in quality and timing? That simple shift, say, adding lentils to your soup, tofu to your stir fry, or a handful of nuts to your snack, could over time change your muscle trajectory. We'll get deeper into the how and why in the next part, specifically looking at the role of insulin sensitivity and blood sugar in muscle preservation. It's not just a diabetes conversation, it's a muscle one too. Let's start with a surprising reframe. Insulin, the hormone often villainized in popular diet culture, is not your enemy. In fact, when it comes to preserving muscle mass, insulin plays an unsung but essential role. At its core, insulin is an anabolic hormone. That means it helps build things, not just fat, as commonly believed, but also muscle tissue. After you eat a meal, insulin rises, and one of its roles is to signal your body to shuttle amino acids into muscle cells, promoting repair and growth. It also suppresses muscle protein breakdown, which is happening all the time in the background. In other words, insulin doesn't just manage blood sugar, it helps protect your muscle. Now here's where it gets more nuanced. As we age, especially in the presence of sedentary lifestyles, ultra-processed food intake, or excess visceral fat, we become more insulin resistant. That means our cells, including our muscle cells, stop responding efficiently to insulin signal. The result? Less amino acid uptake, more muscle breakdown, and a gradual erosion of lean tissue over time. It's a slow drift, not a dramatic drop, but over years and decades, this metabolic resistance can translate into sarcopenia, the age loss of muscle mass, an increased frailty, impaired mobility, and higher risk for metabolic disease. But here's the hopeful twist. This is not inevitable. Studies show we can reverse or reduce insulin resistance with targeted interventions, especially through food quality, physical activity, and sleep. Let's break that down. First, from a dietary lens, fiber-rich whole foods, particularly legumes, whole grains, and vegetables, have been consistently shown to improve insulin sensitivity. The PREDAM trial in Spain, which followed over 7,000 adults at high cardiovascular risk, found that a Mediterranean-style diet rich in plant-based fats, fiber, and polyphenols improved metabolic health markers, including insulin function. Similarly, plant-predominant diets, not necessarily vegan, but rich in plants, have been associated with lower rates of type 2 diabetes and better glucose control in large cohort studies. This is partly due to lower intramyocellular fat, that's fat inside the muscle cells, which interferes with insulin signaling. Reducing that fat helps the muscle cells become more responsive again. And this matters at night. Why? Because poor glycemic control, especially after dinner, has been shown to blunt the body's overnight repair processes. If your blood sugar remains elevated or insulin is working inefficiently while you sleep, your body prioritizes regulating glucose instead of repairing muscle. So a practical insight: aim for balanced, moderate meals at dinner with a blend of protein, healthy fat, and fiber rather than ultra-processed or carb-heavy fare alone. This can smooth out the post-meal glucose spike, enhance overnight insulin sensitivity, and set up better conditions for muscle repair. And again, we return to timing. In a 2019 study published in Cell Metabolism, researchers compared early versus late-night eating in identical calorie meals. The group that ate earlier in the evening showed significantly better glucose regulation and fat oxidation, even when the meals were nutritionally identical. Our circadian biology is tuned to digest earlier in the day, not at midnight. But a light, protein-rich snack before bed, as we discussed in part 2, particularly if it's low in added sugar and starch, can support muscle metabolism without disrupting glycemic control. Physical activity amplifies all of this. Just 15 minutes of post-dinner walking has been shown to blunt glucose spikes in people with prediabetes. And resistance training, even twice per week, has a profound effect on improving insulin sensitivity by increasing the glucose uptake capacity of muscle cells. Let's pause here to connect the dots. When you eat a nutrient-dense dinner, say lentils over barley, with leafy greens and tahini, and take a short walk afterward, you're doing several things at once: enhancing insulin sensitivity, supporting blood sugar stability, preparing your muscles to absorb and utilize amino acids more efficiently, creating better conditions for overnight repair and muscle preservation. That's metabolic multitasking, and it's not about supplements, fads, or extreme. It's about sequence, synergy, and sustainability. Let's also bring in a subtle ethical point here. The same dietary patterns that support insulin function and muscle health, whole plant foods, legumes, nuts, seeds, are also those with lower environmental footprints and higher social equity potential. When we move away from ultra-processed, resource-intensive foods and toward whole plant-predominant patterns, we're not just feeding our muscles, we're feeding a better food system. So tonight, instead of skipping dinner or reaching for quick carbs, consider what might nourish both your body and your metabolism. A balanced plate, a short walk, maybe a light, high-quality snack before bed. None of it is flashy, but it's the kind of rhythm that builds resilience. If this kind of practical, science-grounded, ethics-aware nutrition resonates with you, consider subscribing. It helps more than you know and brings us closer to a community that values health without the hype. There's a long-standing belief still floating around dinner tables, gyms, and yes, even some nutrition textbooks that plant-based proteins are incomplete or inferior when it comes to supporting muscle health. Now, like many nutrition myths, there's a kernel of truth here, but it's wrapped in decades-old science and oversimplification. Let's unpack it. Proteins are made up of building blocks called amino acids, and 9 of them are considered essential, meaning our bodies can't make them. We have to get them from food. Animal proteins, like eggs, dairy, meat, and fish, contain all 9 essential amino acids in proportions that closely match human needs. That's why they're often labeled complete. Some plant proteins, like those from legumes, grains, or nuts, may be lower in 1 or 2 essential amino acids, such as lysine or methionine, but this does not make them insufficient, especially when you consume a variety of plant foods over the course of the day. In fact, the concept of needing to combine rice and beans in the same meal to make a complete protein, that was debunked over 30 years ago. Your body is smarter and more forgiving than that. It maintains an amino acid pool in your bloodstream and tissues, drawing from meals you've eaten throughout the day, not just the last plate you put in front of it. The American Dietetic Association, and more recently, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, has affirmed that well-planned, plant-based diets provide all the essential amino acids and can fully support athletic performance and muscle maintenance across the lifespan. Still, we should acknowledge different protein sources do vary in digestibility and leucine content, 2 factors that affect how efficiently your body uses them to stimulate muscle growth. For instance, whey protein is rapidly digested and has a high leucine content, often around 10 to 12%. Soy, pea, and rice protein have slightly lower leucine, but still enough to stimulate muscle protein synthesis when consumed in adequate amounts. So if you're plant-based or simply plant-predominant, how can you optimize quality without overthinking it? First, diversity. Incorporating a mix of legumes like lentils, chickpeas, black beans, whole grains, quinoa, farro, oats, nuts, seeds, and soy foods provides a full spectrum of amino acids and ensures you're covering your bases. Think of it less like building one perfect meal and more like creating a symphony over time, different instruments or foods adding their part to the composition. Second, portion size. To reach the leucine threshold we talked about in part 3, you might need a slightly larger portion of plant protein compared to animal protein. For example, 30 grams of high-quality animal protein might require about 35 to 40 grams of plant protein to have a similar anabolic effect. That's not a problem, just a planning detail. Third, let's not forget the other benefits of plant-based proteins. Foods like tofu, lentils, and seeds aren't just protein sources. They come bundled with fiber, phytonutrients, antioxidants, and far fewer saturated fats. That's a package deal that supports not only muscle, but heart health, gut health, and even longevity. A great example, the DIFIT study, which I had the privilege of leading. We followed over 600 adults, randomized to either a healthy low-fat or healthy low-carb diet. Both groups improved their metabolic health and lost weight, and here's the key, what mattered most wasn't the macronutrient ratio, but food quality. The participants who increased their vegetable intake, reduced added sugars, and focused on minimally processed whole foods, regardless of their protein source, did best. In other words, it's not about animal versus plant, it's about refined versus whole, and quality vs quantity. Another inspiring data point comes from a 2020 meta-analysis in Advances in Nutrition, which found that higher intake of plant-based proteins was associated with lower all-cause mortality. So even beyond muscle, there are compelling reasons to shift the protein portfolio a little more toward plants. And let's zoom out for a moment. From an environmental standpoint, producing 1 kg of beef protein requires about 20 times more land and generates 11 times more greenhouse gases than 1 kg of pea protein. Choosing even one plant-based meal per day can lower your dietary carbon footprint, a powerful way to align personal and planetary health. So here's your tool. Aim to diversify your protein sources, especially at dinner and in any pre-bed snacks. Mix lentils with quinoa, try tofu in a curry, add pumpkin seeds or hemp hearts to a grain bowl. These aren't second-tier proteins, they're nutritional allies if we learn how to use them. One reflective question to end on: what if protein quality wasn't about purity, but about context? About how the whole food nourishes your body, your values, and your long-term well-being. So far, we've talked a lot about what to eat, especially before bed, to help preserve muscle mass, but food doesn't operate in a vacuum. Its effects are shaped and sometimes even dictated by what you do with your body and how well you recover. Let's talk about resistance training. If protein is the brick, exercise is the blueprint. You can't build a house with materials alone. You need a reason, a signal, a plan. That's what resistance training does. It tells your body, hey, we need muscle here. Keep it. Now here's the fascinating part. When you combine resistance training with strategic protein intake, particularly around times when the body is primed for recovery, like after exercise or before sleep, you're tapping into a powerful biological synergy. One study in Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise followed older adults who engaged in progressive resistance training twice a week. When paired with modest increases in protein intake, around 1.2 to 1.5 g/kg/day, they experienced gains in lean mass, improved strength, and better mobility. Even more impressively, they retained these benefits over time with continued training and nutrition support. Now, you don't need a gym membership or a rack of barbells to start. Bodyweight movements like squats, push-ups against a wall, resistance band rows are highly effective. The key is progressive overload, challenging your muscles just a bit more over time. That's how the stimulus for growth, or at least maintenance, stays alive. But just as important as movement is recovery, and that means sleep. Sleep isn't just a break between workouts or meals, it's when the real magic of repair happens. During deep stages of sleep, the body releases growth hormone, a key player in muscle regeneration. Cellular repair processes kick in, and tissues damaged from the day's activity begin to rebuild. Yet, here's the kicker. Without adequate nutrition, especially amino acids, these recovery processes can't reach their full potential. And if your sleep quality is poor or your sleep duration short, even a perfect diet and exercise routine won't deliver optimal benefits. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that just 1 week of sleep restriction, 5 hours per night, reduced muscle protein synthesis by nearly 20%. That's a striking hit to your body's repair machinery, and over time it adds up. Another meta-analysis in Sleep Health connected poor sleep quality to lower muscle strength and increased frailty, particularly in older adults. And this isn't just about quantity, it's about consistency and depth. Interrupted or shallow sleep reduces the amount of time spent in those deep restorative stages where repair happens. So what helps? It turns out the very choices we make around food and movement can loop back and support sleep quality. For instance, regular resistance training has been shown to improve sleep onset and duration. Your body craves deeper rest after exertion. Fiber-rich meals support stable blood sugar and a calm nervous system at night. Avoiding large, heavy meals or excess alcohol close to bedtime reduces nighttime awakenings and improves sleep architecture. And as we've discussed in earlier sections, a light, protein-rich snack before bed, ideally with tryptophan and canteen foods like seeds, oats, or yogurt, may even support sleep by promoting serotonin and melatonin production. Food as fuel and sleep support, that's a win-win. Here's a practical tip. Try stacking your behaviors. Do a short bodyweight workout in the early evening, even just 15 minutes of squats, push-ups, or resistance band rows. Follow it with a balanced dinner, a relaxing wind-down routine, and if it fits your body and preferences, a small, protein-rich snack. 30 to 60 minutes before sleep, this trifecta, movement, nourishment, and rest, forms the foundation of long-term muscle preservation. And again, none of it requires extremes, just small, repeatable practices. And there's an ethical angle here too. When we prioritize strength and recovery as we age, we reduce reliance on the healthcare system, maintain independence longer, and reduce our personal and societal burden of chronic disease. It's not just about us, it's about our families, our communities, and the dignity of aging well. Let's reflect. If you had to pick just one recovery change to try this week, what would it be? A nightly stretch, a sleep routine, a pre-bed protein snack. Start there. If someone told you that your gut bacteria could influence your muscle mass, you might think they were stretching the science. After all, we've long separated digestion from strength. One's about the belly, the other about the biceps, right? Not anymore. Emerging research over the last decade has drawn a surprisingly strong connection between the gut microbiome, the vast ecosystem of trillions of microbes living in your digestive tract, and the maintenance of skeletal muscle. Let's walk through the mechanisms. First, your gut plays a central role in nutrient absorption. It's not just what you eat, it's what your body can actually extract and use. If your gut lining is inflamed or your microbial diversity is low, you may absorb fewer amino acids and vitamins critical for muscle repair, like B12, iron, and magnesium. But more than that, certain beneficial gut microbes actually produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, propionate, and acetate. These compounds have anti-inflammatory effects, help maintain gut barrier integrity, and, here's the twist, influence muscle protein synthesis through a complex interplay with the immune and endocrine systems. In animal studies, mice with disrupted microbiomes showed reduced muscle mass and strength, even with adequate protein intake. When their microbiomes were restored, often through fiber or probiotic interventions, muscle function improved. While we need more human trials, early evidence is aligning. One small human study in Frontiers in Nutrition found that older adults with greater microbiome diversity had higher muscle strength and better physical function independent of age, weight, or diet. So yes, your gut bugs might be working as silent partners in your strength routine. Now, what influences the health of your microbiome? You guessed it, diet quality. In particular, diets rich in fermentable fiber found in foods like legumes, oats, bananas, garlic, onions, and leafy greens feed beneficial bacteria that produce SEFAs. These same foods, when consumed regularly, have also been associated with better metabolic health, lower inflammation, and improved recovery from exercise. On the flip side, ultra-processed foods, high in added sugars, refined flours, and synthetic emulsifiers have been shown to reduce microbial diversity and increase gut permeability, what's often called leaky gut. And while that term has been overused, the concept is real. A compromised gut lining can allow unwanted molecules into circulation, triggering low-grade inflammation that accelerates muscle loss. This brings us to the concept of inflammaging, the chronic, low-level inflammation that increases with age and plays a role in everything from heart disease to cognitive decline to, yes, sarcopenia. A healthy gut helps buffer this inflammatory load, protecting your tissues, including muscle, from unnecessary damage. Let's not forget polyphenols, plant compounds found in berries, herbs, teas, and dark-colored vegetables. These act as prebiotics too, modulating the microbiome in ways that reduce oxidative stress and support cellular repair. So what's the takeaway? If you want to preserve muscle as you age, your strategy shouldn't be just protein and workouts. It should include feeding your gut. A simple way to start: aim for 30 different plant foods per week, a guideline inspired by the American Gut Project, which found that microbial diversity increased significantly in people who met this goal. And diversity matters. A rich microbiome is a resilient one. And don't forget fermented foods: yogurt, kefir, miso, tempeh, sauerkraut, kimchi. Including even small amounts of these regularly can help introduce beneficial bacteria and support digestion. A real-world meal that brings all of this together? Try a tempeh stir-fry with garlic, onions, broccoli, and bell peppers over kimchi. You've got protein, fiber, polyphenols, prebiotics and probiotics, a full gut muscle support system on one plate. One more thought here, and it's an ethical one. Focusing on gut health is a gentle form of what I call stealth nutrition. You're not obsessing over macros or body image. You're eating whole, colorful, culturally diverse foods that happen to benefit your microbiome, your metabolism, and yes, your muscles. It's health by way of nourishment, not punishment. So the next time someone talks about muscle building and skips right to supplements or protein grams, ask them, what are you feeding your gut? Because your microbes may not lift weights, but they're absolutely on your team. Let's take a step back. We've covered a lot. 7 interconnected ideas, each grounded in science, all pointing to the same core truth. Muscle doesn't just fade because of age, it fades because of neglect. And more importantly, we have real tools to do something about it. So here's a plain language recap of what we've learned. Eating a modest, protein-rich snack before bed, especially something slow digesting, can help your body hold on to more muscle while you sleep. As we age, our muscles become less responsive to protein, so timing and quality matter more than ever. Insulin isn't just about blood sugar, it also protects muscle. Improving your insulin sensitivity helps your body keep what you build. Protein quality is real, but it doesn't mean animal only. Diverse plant-based proteins in the right amounts support muscle just as well. Resistance training, even just body weight movements, is the signal your body needs to preserve muscle. Food can't do it alone. Sleep is your recovery window. Poor sleep equals poor muscle repair, no matter how good your diet is. And your gut microbiome? It's a behind-the-scenes hero in nutrient absorption, inflammation control, and muscle function. Nourish it with fiber and fermented foods. What connects all of this is a shift in thinking. Muscle isn't just about strength or vanity. It's a foundation for longevity, independence, and metabolic resilience. And preserving it isn't about restriction or obsession. It's about rhythm, nourishment, and giving your body what it needs when it needs it. So here's a simple challenge for the week ahead. Try just one plant-based, protein-rich meal in the evening and pay attention to how you feel the next morning. Not just physically, but mentally. Your energy, your hunger, your sleep, your strength. Food is feedback and your body is listening. And if you've found value in this kind of science-based, values-conscious approach to nutrition, where we translate data into dignity, not diet rules, I'd love to invite you to subscribe. This channel isn't just about content, it's about a community, people who want to age well, live ethically, and eat in a way that makes sense for both body and planet. We're not chasing fads here, we're building tools. Tools you can carry into your 40s, 50s, 70s, and beyond, and you don't have to do it alone. So if this resonated, hit that like button, leave a comment, and consider subscribing. Let's keep growing stronger together.